What is up, guys? Welcome to another one of these vlogs, and in this video I want to talk about which language should you start with as a programmer. Maybe it's your first step or your first day wanting to learn how to program, and of course it's super confusing not knowing where to start because there are so many programming languages, and of course you don't want to pick the wrong one. But I would say the first thing you need to keep into account is that you need to decide what you want to do as a programmer. Do you want to create video games? Do you want to create AI? Do you want to create web applications? You need to decide this ahead of time so that you can actually have a goal, and then you can actually start picking whether you want to use JavaScript for web applications or Python for backend and AI, or maybe you want to use C# for general applications for Windows. Who knows? You need to decide first on what you want to make, and then it's a quick and easy search. You go on Google how to make it. You might be using C# with Unity to make the best video game ever. You might be using Kotlin to make Android apps.
This video is brought to you by Code Palace, a free way to learn how to code.
Or you might be using Dart to make multi-platform apps with Flutter. And the opportunities are really endless with these, but one thing you shouldn't worry about is picking the wrong language, because once you learn one of these languages, everything you learn will be transferable to the next language. And that's why I started with Java, and then I moved on to Kotlin, then I got onto Python, and finally now I'm at JavaScript. And it didn't take more than a few hours to understand how each one of these worked. Of course, it takes a bit more time to perfect it, but it takes very little time to transfer your skills to a new language because they are so similar. And yeah, so I mean, as a personal recommendation, I would go for something a bit difficult, such as Java, or let's even say C++, because you would get a really good understanding on how the programming languages work when they're a bit more bare, because today we have a big abstraction when it comes to languages. For example, pretend you go and choose Kotlin. Kotlin was based on Java and a few other languages, so it's a lot easier than Java. It has a huge layer of abstraction, which means instead of writing maybe 10 lines of code to do one function, or to execute one command, you only have to write one. But the problem with that is we don't really know what's happening under all of that code. And that can lead to problems in the future, of course, when you have a problem that you've never seen before. Learning Java or C++ will prepare you, at least, for these problems in the future, and you'll understand a lot more because you need to write all of these codes manually, and you won't be able to appreciate how good Kotlin is until you've tried Java or another language that takes a bit longer. One of those bare bone languages, I would say. But moving on, let's say you've decided what you want to do. The next thing that's really important is to understand how committed are you, because if you pick Python, Python is very, very easy to learn. But if you want to master it, you're going to have to put a lot of effort into doing calculations, learning algorithm, learning data sets. It is very difficult compared to other languages where you just have to use logic, because here you actually have to start thinking about algorithms and how to use those to create machines that learn, or AI, or so on. So you need to also understand how committed are you. If you're very committed to learning programming, then definitely go for something really nice like Python or JavaScript, or even, you could pick actually any language you want. If you're committed, you can bring these very far. But if you just want to remain a hobbyist, I would definitely recommend starting with Python or JavaScript, because the possibilities with those are nearly endless, and they are very easy to use. If you want to create AI or something simple in Python like a chatbot, all you have to do usually is import a package that does it all for you, and then you just need to learn a few keywords, and you will have your AI bots or your chatbot ready in just half an hour, let's say. But this of course requires a bit of practice and learning how things work in Python. But I would say Python is one of the easiest and the fastest programs to learn compared to all the other ones I've tried. And I also think Python is a great opportunity for you to see how powerful it is, because with Python you can automate things just with a single command. You can make it that it reads all your emails and responds to all of them. You can make a chatbot for WhatsApp. You can make a Telegram bot. You can make these with very few lines of code. Compared to Java and other languages such as that one, you would need to write at least a few pages of code before you can get to something concrete. Another thing that's really, really important is that you get started. If you don't know what you want to do, just get started with something such as Java or Kotlin or Python. Just get started, because later you'll be able to transfer those skills. I got started with Java, and I don't see myself ever using Java again. I don't like it as a language, to be honest, but I started with it and I learned a lot of the core concepts which easily translated to Kotlin, easily translated to Python and JavaScript and so on. It's like the concepts will always be transferable. So wherever you start, just get started. It's the most important step, is that you actually get started. And as a personal recommendation as which language to learn, I would recommend starting with a language such as Java. That's the one I started with, and that was probably the hardest language I had to learn. And from there, I moved on to Kotlin, then to Python, then to JavaScript. But Java is where I learned absolutely all of the key features on how a programming language should work. And I think if you want to even learn something a bit harder, I would go for C++. But if you start with the very hard languages, you'll be able to transfer these skills to Python, to JavaScript, without the slightest problem. Because these modern programming languages simplify a lot of the things you would have to do in Java manually. And that saves us a lot of time as programmers, and you'll notice that it's just a relief when you go from something that requires you to make 100 lines of code that in Python you can just do in 1 line of code. You start to appreciate these things. So I definitely recommend starting with a language such as C++ or Java, just to get a grip on how the programming world works. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover in this vlog. If you have any recommendations on how you think or which language you think someone should get started with, please leave it in the comment section below. I would love to read it. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.